Welcome back to a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. This is our very last episode on the Living Intentionally series. Yes, I have one more episode for you on this topic. If you've been enjoying this series, you're going to love today's episode because today we're going to be talking about the mindset shifts that are required in order to live more intentionally, in order to make living intentionally so much easier this year. So, are you ready? Let's dig into today's podcast episode. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. We have been talking now for several weeks on this whole topic of living intentionally. And I have one more episode for you that I think you're really going to enjoy if you have been enjoying the series on living intentionally. Just to recap what we've covered so far. On the very first episode of this series, we talk about what intentional living is and what is not. And I share with you the one thing, if you're only going to do one thing to live more intentionally, what that thing needs to be. Then we talk about what are some areas in our lives where we all can be a little bit more intentional this year? And I shared how I am approaching each of these areas and some tips on how to be more intentional around each of them. Then last week, we talked about 25 habits that you can incorporate into your life to live more intentionally. And remember, we said you're not going to try them all at once, just one at a time, one little step at a time. That's the way to go. And today, we're going to wrap up this series talking about mindset. Because I think when we are in the right mindset, everything is so much easier, right? I 100% believe this. So today I'm going to share with you 5 mindset shifts that will make living intentionally much easier this year. And let me share with you that I've started to work on making these mindset shifts, and they're already helping me feel that I can do this. I shared with you last week that I've been struggling a little bit with trying to live more intentionally because it's not easy, right? It is a journey and it can be a little bit frustrating and discouraging at the beginning. But I believe that once you get into the right mindset and you install the right habits, it's just going to become second nature. I am 100% convinced of that. So let's talk about mindset, right? Let's talk about what are some of these 5 essential mindsets that you need to live more intentionally and to simplify your life a little bit this year, right? At the end of the day, living more intentionally requires us to simplify. And we're going to be talking more about simplifying this year in different areas of our lives and some tactics and tips to help you simplify, automate, make things smoother and easier. But let's start with mindset. So, the first mindset is I know what matters to me. We've talked about this since we started this year. Every single podcast episode this year, I've been referencing to knowing what matters most to you. First and foremost, if you want to live more intentionally, if you want to simplify your life, you must cultivate the confidence and the clarity to both define and defend What matters most to you? Let me repeat this one more time because this is very, very important. I think this is foundational for living more intentionally. First and foremost, if you want to live more intentionally and simplify your life, you must cultivate the confidence and clarity to both define and defend what matters most to you. This might sound easy, but well, as I've been mentioning to you, it is not that easy. But it gets easier and easier the more you practice it, like any other habit or any other mindset. At the heart of things, living more intentionally and simplifying our lives means choosing what matters most over the things that are less important or sometimes even non essential. It requires us to say no to many good opportunities in order to create the time and the space for the things and the people that matter most to us and that makes us feel alive. And let me tell you that once you make that decision that you want to focus on what matters most, life is going to test you. It has been my experience this year. I have mentioned before that I suffer FOMO, fear of missing out. Every time there is an opportunity in front of me of something that it's interesting, is this shiny object, it's hard for me to say no to it. And this year, I'm being tested over and over again. All of a sudden, since I made this decision of being more intentional, I feel like the floodgates of invitations to different things have just opened and unleash with no control. I've gotten invitations to join different training sessions, some of them even free, which is so hard to say no to when you know this is coming from someone that you admire and you know that it's interesting and you want to do it and it's free. It's hard to say no. But you know what? I've been practicing, and the more I practice, the more comfortable I'm getting around saying no. So I can make the time and the space for what I said matters most to me. I've also got so many invitations to speak at events. Some of these are like big events and things that have been on my vision board for years. And I'm getting to that point where these things are actually happening, and now I need to make the difficult decision of what am I going to say yes to and what am I going to say no to. And really being very intentional about asking myself, how are these things aligning, like truly aligning to my core values and to the things that I want most and that matter most to me. And it's hard because in the surface, I can I can trace a line of sight to all of them, right? I can tell a story on how they all fit into what matters most. But the truth is, they don't. And I need to let go of all of those excuses and let go of my FOMO and embrace JOMO, the joy of missing out. Sometimes these choices are going to be simple, right? Like turning down a dinner with a friend because it's your kid's birthday. That is a no brainer and maybe straightforward and maybe easier. But sometimes, like my experience this year, you're going to come across decisions that are hard to make, things that are hard to pass on, things that are hard to say no to. But stay strong. The more you practice, the easier that it gets. I promise. I'm already feeling it. You know, I have the opportunity to practice so much this year that I'm getting to the point that it's getting easier to say no. And it feels so freeing when you're able to say no. It's a feeling that I haven't felt before. And it feels so good because I know that that no means yes to something that is even more important than what I just turned down. And that makes me feel really, really good with myself. In order to get to that point, though, you need to have the clarity again around your values, around what is that matters most to you. Okay, the second mindset for living intentionally and simplifying your life is I am not defined by what I own. One thing that I want to be more intentional this year is just about, not defining my worth by what I have, but by who I am. That is something that is really big for me. I've done so much work, like that deep work on reinventing myself and uncovering my true self and embracing her. And I'm loving that piece. And I want to focus on being defined by that, but who I am rather than what I have or what I accomplish. And not that accomplishing things it's not important to me. It is. I am by nature a competitive person. And I don't think that will ever change. But I'm not letting that define me. What defines me is who I am. Most of us know, in theory at least, that we are not defined by the things that we own, right? We have heard this many times. In theory, it all makes sense. But let me ask you this and be viciously honest with yourself. Do your actions ever contradict this belief? I had found that my actions have not always been aligned. I say this with compassion because I am still work in progress. Sure, I've come long way over the years, especially over the last year, and I still have long ways to go. And in the world that we live, in the society that we live, is so hard to let go of that. Let go of identifying ourselves and letting our identity revolve around our jobs, our titles, what we have, what we accomplish, because it's what we hear day in and day out. When personally I notice these thoughts, I like to take a step back and just remind myself on what I believe. And that is that my worth is inherited to who I am. That I am not defined by external things. I am defined by what is inside. And that is my true self. So I like to always remind myself that the best thing that I can do always is to show up as my true self and embrace her and be proud of her. She is not perfect. I am not perfect, but I love myself. I have come to terms with that, and I have come to terms with the fact that that is the most important thing, that we live in alignment with who we are and we define ourselves by who we are and not our titles of our accomplishments or the things that we own or we don't own. So, in summary, it is a continual process, right? It's an ongoing process like everything. And we just need to try to be a little bit more intentional about listening to that inner voice and practice. Practice makes the master. So, anytime that you are triggered to think that you are less or more because of your title or your accomplishments or the things that you own, step back, take a deep breath, and remind yourself that your self worth is something that it's yours. It's inside of you. You are worth it. And you need to define yourself by who you are. Okay. The next mindset that is key in living intentionally and simplifying our lives is my time is valuable. Really believe that your time is valuable because it is. It is. Your time is your most precious resource. Is the one resource that is not renewable. Once you spend your time, it's gone. You can take the clock back. You can recoup that time. Once you've spent your time, it's gone. So, have you ever asked yourself where and how are you spending your time? And is that in alignment with what matters most to you? Speaking of self worth, how highly do you value your time? Right? That's a question that I think we all need to ask ourselves. Do you treat it as a limited commodity worth protecting, or do you give it freely without any consideration? Think about that for a second. If you want to find balance in your life and experience the ease that comes with living intentionally and simplifying your life, you must believe that your time is valuable and act in accordance to that belief. More times equals freedom. Freedom to live slowly and in your own terms. And who doesn't want to live life in their own terms? I do. And I know I shared with you this before. I feel that time goes quicker and quicker every year. And it's a point that is just a blink of the eyes. And I see that especially with my kids. And I keep wishing that time would go slower. And you know what? Time is not going any faster or any slower. But how you perceive time can change when you protect your time, when you start believing that your time is valuable and you start acting in accordance to that, not giving your time freely and without thought, but being intentional about how you're giving your time. Okay, I said this year I wanted to be more intentional about sharing with you products and companies that I love and I enjoy. Today I want to share with you one of my favorite snacks, Build Bars. Build Bars are the best tasting protein bar that I've ever had, and I'm not exaggerating. It's like having a candy bar, but it's packed with protein. They all have at least 17 grams of protein with anywhere between 130 and 180 calories. They're the perfect snack to help you hit your protein goals, to stay in track, and calm that sweet tooth cravings anytime in the day. You have to try them. And for all the listeners of the Leading Yourself podcast, you can get 15% off when you use the code to be healthy for life, or use the link on the show notes of this podcast episode. Now, let's get back to today's episode. Okay, so a few questions or more questions that you can ask yourself to make sure that you really are valuing your time and embracing this mindset. And the more yeses that you have, the more that you value your time, the more no's that you have, maybe it's time to reevaluate your relationship with time and your mindset around time and how valuable your time is. So here are the questions. There are 3 questions. 1, do you set clear boundaries with others, or are you too quickly to sacrifice your time or energy whenever someone asks you to do something? Question number 2, are you aware of what is your relationship with time? Do you often waste time on things that have little value? And number 3, how much time do you spend every day caring, cleaning, manipulating any physical possessions? And are these items really worth the time that you invested in taking care of them? Or are there other more valuable things that you can take care of, like yourself? Think about how much time do you spend maintaining physical things and caring for physical things versus taking time in caring about yourself and investing in your personal growth, your self care, all of those things that are filling up your cup. If for whatever reason you have a lot of no's and maybe answering those questions was a little bit eye opening for you, here's a little tip. Try to write down a list of all the things that you wish you had more time to do. And next time that you are tempted to sacrifice your time or that you're jumping too quickly to say yes in giving your time to other things or other people, take a look at your list and ask yourself, what in this list am I giving up in order to say yes to this request? Yeah, let me explain this exercise one more time. And I really encourage you to do this. You can do this in the note section of your phone. Just make a list of the things or the people in your life that you value most, that you wish you had more time to spend with. And the next time that someone asks you to give them their time, look at that list on your phone before saying yes to that request and ask yourself what things or what people in this list am I going to be giving up in order to say yes to this request? This exercise is so powerful. I keep a running list on my phone. Every time that I feel bad because I did not spend enough time with my kids, or I missed something at school, or there was something that I really wanted to do and I didn't get to do because I didn't have the time, they all go into this running list on my phone. So when an opportunity comes, and I told you life has been testing me lately, when an opportunity comes, before I say yes, I go to my phone, I go through the list, and I'm like, okay, if I say yes to that shiny object, I am going to be saying no to one of these things. What is that I'm going to be saying no to? And am I okay with saying no to that? And that has really been helping me to decide what to say yes to and what to say no to. Okay, the next mindset. I don't know if this is number 4 or number 5. Okay, let's just get going. Next mindset, I can balance intentions with expectations. When some time ago, I was in this yoga class, and the yoga teacher was sharing with us this something powerful about balancing intentions and expectations. Imagine for a moment that you're shooting an arrow, and while the arrow is in your bow, you close one eye, focus on the target, and you do your best to aim to the bullseye, right? But then you let go. The arrow flies forward, and you're no longer on control on the direction on which that arrow goes. No matter how good your aim or how skilled you are, just as sudden gusts or wind could blow the arrow off course, and there's nothing that you can do about it. The moral of the story is that no matter how much you prepare yourself, sometimes things don't go to plan. That doesn't mean you shouldn't bother preparing, right? You still are aiming for that target, but once you let go of what you can control, you need to release your expectations. Simple living and intentional living requires this same dedicated balance. And it's really hard to find this balance. I'm still struggling personally to find this balance, right? We absolutely should make intentional choices about our lives. But we should also know to let go of our expectations when things go beyond our control. I once learned this tool. I think I learned it from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the book that has most impacted my life. But I've seen this tool in many other places is the circle of control versus the circle of influence, right? There are things that are under your control. There are things that they're not under your control, but you can influence. And then there are things, there's an outer ring that is the circle of concern. These are things that we can control and we can influence. And this tool is so helpful. It has been so helpful for me since I learned it. This must have been in 2004. Whenever I'm struggling with something, I go to this tool and I ask myself, where does this thing fall? Is it under my control? Is it something that I can control, but maybe I can influence? Or is just a concern? And just creating the awareness of where this thing is, it just helps me to let go if it's just a concern. Sometimes, we just need to vent and let go. If it's in my area of influence, I ask myself, what can I do to influence this thing or this decision? Who can I talk to? And if it's in my area of control, then I'm like, what am I going to do about this? Right. And that's what I want to spend most of my time in, the things that I can control. But the reason why we are constantly disappointed with other people or with situations is because of our expectations. Expectations kill relationships and they can leave you really frustrated in any situation. When you have an expectation of someone behaving a certain way or a situation going a certain way, that is out of your control, those expectations are just setting you up for disappointment. So I've learned over the years that I need to let go of my expectations and focus on the things that I can control and spend 80% of my time working on things that I can control. That is the way that I get to make progress. That is the way that I get to feel in control of my life. And that is the way and the things and the people and the relationships where I can be more intentional. Okay, the fifth and last mindset. I know how much is enough. For many people, a lack of simplicity a lot of times stems from this constant feeling of it's never enough. I talked about this in one of the episodes on this series. I think it was about in the one that we were talking about the different areas of your life, and there was this category that I said, I don't know how to call it other than this not enoughness kind of area in our life, right? Not enough time, not enough money. I'm not thin enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not old enough. I'm not young enough. I'm not whatever enough. And the list goes on and on and on. There is always something else to chase. And as a result, life is never simple. And life, it's always going by so fast because we're always chasing something. And of course, we start to tell ourselves someday things will be better. We just need to buy one more thing, earn a little bit more of money, get through one more busy season, um, get through one hiccup, right? There's always one more thing, and then we will be happy, and then we will have time. And there's always going to be something. We know this. You know this. If it's not this, it's going to be that. There's always going to be something that is going to come in the form of excuse not to focus on what matters most and not to be more intentional. There's always going to be that one thing that is never enough. And personally, I have to say that sometimes I have felt trapped in this never ending cycle. But the good news is that you and we have the power to stop this anytime. And that it's done through mindset. That is done through mindset. So here are a few questions that you can ask yourself that might help in embracing this mindset. One, how much do I need to be happy? Question number two, if I'm not happy now, why do I think that X or Y will make me any happier? And what do I need to sacrifice to have more? Is it worth it? Or can I learn to be happy with what I have? And as with most things, right? There is no right or wrong answer, but clearly defining what enough means to you is the foundation to overcoming this limiting belief and embracing this mindset that is going to help you to show more intentionally. Instead of endlessly chasing more and more and more, why not instead create boundaries and space to enjoy the simple things in life? I am all about this lately. This is one of the things that with living more intentionally this year, I'm trying to focus on savoring the little moments, of living for the little moments, not for the big ones. The big ones will come and they will go. And once they go, we are just chasing the next big thing. Instead, we can just be more present and enjoy those little simple things in life, those little moments. It's the accumulation of those simple little moments in life that is going to bring you joy and happiness. It's not the big things. The big things, you will get them because you will. If you work hard and if you focus, you will get them. But you get them, and the next day you will feel that you need to chase the next big thing. So instead, again, let's set some boundaries. Let's make space to enjoy the little moments. That's what intentional living is all about. Okay, I hope that this last episode on this series was inspiring, was helpful. Hopefully, you pick up one or two things that you can think about and look to work towards embracing some of these mindsets that will help make intentional living just a little bit easier this year. Okay, I am sure that we'll talk more about intentional living at one point this year because, this is my thing this year. This is my big focus this year. But for now, we are going to say goodbye to the topic as we move into a new month next week and we start exploring new things, new topics, new tools to help you in your journey of becoming the best version of yourself and living your most fulfilling life. I hope you have a great week ahead. As always, I'm going to ask you if you found this podcast helpful or inspiring, or maybe both. Do me a favor, share it with a friend or post it in social media. If you do, don't forget to tag me at Leading Yourself Podcast so I can personally thank you for spreading the word of the podcast. And as I announced last week, I have started a Patreon community. This is a little private community where every month I'm sharing bonus episodes, bonus content, workbooks, tools, If you like the podcast, you're going to love being part of this community. I'm going to put the link on the show notes of the podcast episode so you can check it out. I hope you decide to join us, and I hope you have a great week ahead. I will see you here again next week for a new episode of the Leading Yourself podcast.